Hello and welcome everyone to today's tutorial on learning C++ from the scratch. Today, we are going to talk about recursion in C++. So what is recursion? Well, recursion is a technique that we use with function, where we talked about function before, and said that function is a container that holds a line or multiple line of codes, as you can see over here. Here we created a function called greet, and it holds two lines of code over here. And now we can use this function inside another function by calling its name, where we call this function greet. So if we call it inside another function and try to run our program, it will activate all the code inside this function over here. And if we call this function inside the main function, which is another function, twice, it will activate it twice. So let's try it out. Now if we run our program, it will activate it twice. So that is function. Then what about recursion? Well, recursion simply means calling a function not inside another function, but inside the same function. So this is like everything between this curly bracket is considered as inside the greet function. Now, if we call the greet inside it, this is what we call recursion. So simply, recursion means calling a function inside the same function. But even though that this is simply called recursion, this is not the correct way to use recursion. Why? Because this is going to create a problem. And what will happen here is that the function will keep calling itself forever. Like the first time that we run our program, main will call the greet function. And when we call the greet function, it will activate this line of code first, then this one second, and third, it will call itself again. So when it calls itself again, it will repeat all the code inside it again. So it will run this line of code, and then call itself again. So it will keep calling itself forever, which we also can consider as infinite loop. So let's try to run our program to see this problem. As you can see, this program will keep calling this two line of code and then calling itself forever and will never stop, which is why this is not the right way to use the recursion. So what we can do? Well, there are multiple ways to stop this. The first way is to try to put a number here that will consider as how many times do we want to repeat the function. For example, we're going to put an argument here which is 5. Now, we want this function to receive this 5 by creating a parameter here. So I'm going to create a parameter. Let's call it limit. Now, we want this function to call itself while the limit is bigger than 0. So I can say here, if limit is bigger than 0. And also, I want each time the function call itself, I want the limit to decrease by 1. Because the first time that we call the greet function, it will start with the value 5. So at the start, the first time limit will be equal to 5. Let's just comment this. Now, I want each time we call our program, I want the limit to decrease by 1. And we can use this way to decrease the value of a variable by 1. Like we can decrease it by putting minus minus here or here. Like you can choose whatever method you want. Both methods will decrease the value of limit by 1. So what's going to happen now? Well, the first time we call the greet function, we are going to insert 5 over here. And the function will receive the 5 inside this parameter over here. So what is inside limit this time is 5. Now, it will activate this line of code, hello there, and then welcome to recursion tutorial, and then decrease the value of limit by 1. So limit will become 4 in this line over here. So it will turn it to 4. And then it will ask, is limit bigger than 0? Yes, 4 is bigger than 0. So it will call itself again. But this time I wanted to call it with limit with different value. Like the first time we call it with the value 5. Now, what number will be here? Is it 5? No, it will not be 5 because limit now decreased by 1 and changed from 5 to 4. So now we are going to call the greet with 4. And now it will receive 4 instead of 5. And then we are going to call hello there, welcome to the recursion tutorial, and this time we are going to decrease the limit value which is currently 4 and turn it to 3. Now it will become 3. Is 3 bigger than 0? Yes, it is. Now we are going to call the greet function, but this time with value 3 instead of 4 or 5. So now limit will be 3. It will activate this 2 line of code, and then we'll decrease the value of limit from 3 to 2. And is 2 bigger than 0? Yes, it is. So we are going to call the limit, but this time it will be like this, greet 2 instead of 5 or 4 or 3. And now 2 will be considered what is the value stored inside the limit. It will run this line of code and then this line of code, and then we'll decrease the value of limit from 2 to 1. Is 1 bigger than 0? Yes, it is. So it is going to call the greet with value 1. And now, when 1 is stored here, it will call this 1 and this line of code, and then decrease the value of limit from 1 to 0. Now, the question is, limit, the value inside limit, which is 0, bigger than 0? No, it is not bigger than 0. So this time, like this line of code will not activate, because the if condition will activate the line of code that is inside it if and only if the condition is true. But now the condition is false. Like, you can use curly bracket over here or not, like you are free to do whatever you want. I want just to make it clear that this is what is inside the limit. Now, if we try to run our program, it will not repeat the process forever, as you can see over here. It will only repeat it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is the right way to use recursion in C++. The first time, recursion means that calling a function inside another function. Secondly, we need to do something inside the function so that it don't keep repeat calling itself forever. And you can say that recursion is similar to loop. So it keeps calling itself until a condition turns to false, or maybe until a condition turns to true. Like, for example, there's another way where instead of putting this one over here, we are going to put it at the end. And here, what we are going to do is use the return keyword. And we know that when we use the return keyword inside a function, it will not activate anything that is below it. So the moment this condition, like we can say here, equal. So now if our condition here become true, what will happen is that it is going to activate the return keyword, which means that it is going to exit this function without completing the rest of the code below it, which means it will not call itself again. So let's try to break down the process of this program. First, we are going to call the function with the value 5, and 5 will be stored inside the limit variable. It's going to activate this line of code and then this line of code, and then we'll decrease the value of limit by 1. So limit will become 4 instead of 5. Now, is limit equal to 0? No, limit currently contains 4, so it is not 0, which means that this condition is false and will not activate the return keyword. And we'll keep running the rest of the code, which means it will run this code over here, which called greet 4, because the limit value is 4, so it is going to call limit 4. And we'll keep the process until the limit decreases to 0. And when it becomes 0, is 0 equal to 0? Yes, it is. At that moment, it is going to activate the return keyword, which means that it is going to exit the void function, which is called greet, without activating the rest of the code over here. And that is the second way we can stop the recursion of repeating itself forever. And now if we run our program, what you will see is that it's not going to repeat the process forever, as you can see over here. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.